Hello, and welcome to the Music Survival Guide, the independent musician's guide on how to survive in the music industry. My name is Phil, a mixing and mastering engineer. Hope you're all doing wonderfully well out there. As I record, this is July, so I hope, and it'll go out in August, so I hope you have /are having /will have a wonderful break. It is worth having some time off, even if you can't go anywhere. It is worth just having some time to rest and take time for yourself. But I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm not going to go on about that. I'm going to gently move on. This week on the podcast, I'm interviewing Liam and Will of Tribal Jury. We talk about all sorts of things. We talk about the challenges of finding gigs and the joys when you do. We talk about harnessing your online image effectively and how to go about that. And finally, we talk about spending your money wisely, making sure you get the best bang for your buck when you put down money for the band. I'm going to stop wittering on and just say on with the interview. So, today on the podcast, I am joined by Liam and Will of Tribal Jury. How are you both?
Oh, both very well, thank you. I think. How are you, Will? You Will?
Very well, thank you. Yes.
How are the children?
Kids are chaos as ever, but no, it's all good fun.
Why I don't have any?
Yeah, I've got a toddler, so I know the feeling. I really do. So my first question, as always, is from an online random question generator. And my question for you both this week is, what are you interested in that most people haven't heard of? It's a very strange question. I
do like my antiques. I used to watch, I'm going to sound very middle class and ancient now, but I used to watch the Celebrity Antiques Road Trip. Great program. If you haven't watched it, great program. Used to while away many an afternoon. It's just on that moment of the pensioners slot before tea time, so like that 5:15 just before, because if you're eating anything after 6 o'clock, you're up all night. But I do like my antiques, and in particular, early 20th century glass.
Oh.
Yes, I was fascinated by a particular item that a chap picked up that was a particular example of such early glass that was made, and he knew that it was early made because of the blue tinge that was in the glass. It hadn't been purified enough yet. They hadn't developed the technique enough to be completely clear. So early glass is identifiable by a slight blue tinge, and if you do find any and it's on sale for £1, buy it immediately because it will sell for thousands in a general auction sale. So I found that to be particularly interesting of note. I still haven't found any yet, but always on the lookout in the Dorking antique shops, of which there are many. William, over to you. Many.
I don't think Will really cared about ancient glass, but I could sort of tell, but no, that's okay.
But it stayed in my mind, It definitely made an impression on me. William. You can tell I don't have children. You can tell I don't have children because I have time for that sort of thing.
No, what the answer I was going to give was before kids, yeah. Most people haven't heard of some of these weird and brilliant sort of board games that I've got in my collection. And I say that because just talking to so many people, they've never heard of most of them. These
Try me.
Hidden role-playing games.
I really like board games.
Try you.
Yeah.
Well, all sorts. Yeah, I've got a Carnival Zombie next to me.
Oh, no, I haven't heard of that.
Yeah,
one.
Exactly.
Will does host a very, very good board games and cheese evening. So just putting that out there. Yeah,
that's interesting because I'm part of a board game club, so I'm very into random board games, especially ones that most people haven't heard of. I mean, the game that I'm nerding out about at the moment is Power Grid.
Yes, that's right.
Heard of Power Grid? Do you love Power Grid?
That, yeah.
It's a great game. Anyway, it's not really what we're here to talk about, even though very old glass and board games are wonderful topics in of themselves. I'm quite sure there are podcasts on these topics, and you can go and find them wherever you're listening to podcasts. But as we are where we are, my first real question for you both is, how did you get into music in the first place?
My musical background comes from my dad, who was a radio DJ for best part of 30 years. Started off at the Surrey Herald as a music correspondent, and he then went off to basically help start XFM, which later became Radio X, and I believe is still on the airwaves at the time of recording. I mean, growing up, the amount of vinyls and CDs and tapes just from, the 30s all the way up to, well, whenever that was, sort of like proper, he hit his sort of like the peak was sort of early 2001, 2002, when I really just have this distinct memory of just looking up at the the living room wall and just seeing nothing but CDs and vinyl. I mean, so you've got everything from David Bowie to Led Zeppelin, Guns N' Roses, Oasis, which personally, that's who I grew up on. I was Oasis, not Blur. Sorry, Blur fans. But then sort of obscure acoustic-y artists such as Nick Drake, Jackson Browne, those kids from the Velvet Underground, all of that stuff was sort of my early musical education, and those are the first songs that I started to write. The first guitar I picked up was an acoustic, and that definitely struck a nerve with me that continued really. And listening to him on the radio, we were always treated to and being brought home the latest, the most up and coming music at the time, which, until I think he retired not long ago, but he left the radio business 2008. He stopped being a presenter. So, it's sort of those early noughties is where that's where my musical education kind of stops. Because at that point, then I kind of fell off the loop and stopped listening to anything that was brand new and stuck with what I grew up on. So that's where I've cut my cloth, as it were, historically, through my dad, and then went on to learn instruments from the age of 7, and haven't really stopped. Started writing songs at 14, and then it didn't really kick into gear until I went to university and joined loads of clubs and started just basically writing lyrics based off of what I'd grown up on.
Yeah, mine's a similar story. It's also, through my dad, really.
Was he a DJ?
No, he wasn't a DJ. No, just saxophonist actually, but not a very good one.
Steve.
But no, always on a Saturday or Sunday morning, he'd be playing vinyls of Santana and things like that. And then as I got slightly older, he'd be playing the Unholy Trinity and Hendrix, things like that. And then as I got to college, all my peers started picking up instruments. Well, school actually, later school, sort of year 10, 11. And that's when my friend George showed me how to play a bass. And ever since then I started getting into bands in college days. Started off playing very heavy music, and it's just gotten a bit lighter since then, I suppose, and more melodical.
Definitely, you're a very melodical bass player.
So it started off just death thrash with all
that is a bit different.
all rhythm and not much melody.
It's good fun though. Good fun. So, how did you get together as a band? What was that kind of process like?
It's kind of it turns out the world is very, very small in the end, because Will and Alex, our drummer, they know each other. They go way back to school days, and I used to be in a band that was started off as folk and acoustic, and that didn't really go anywhere. So I tried to make it into a sort of rock alternative band that tried to do both acoustic and rock and folk, and that didn't really work either. So a friend of mine who was the guitarist in that band is now the guitarist in a phenomenal band called Brave Rival. He said to me, "Why don't you start a blues rock band? Take those rock songs and turn them into a band." So I put a call out onto Facebook, and it just so happened that a woman who my family used to know a very, very long time ago, her husband and my dad go way back from when they used to work in retail, called Amanda Green, came back to me straight away and said, "I know these two guys. Will and Alex, they're both friends of my son. And her son is Ollie Green, who I used to hang out with when I was maybe 3 years old. I have not seen him for 30 years until just recently at William's wedding party that was just a couple of weeks ago, and literally started from there. She gave me Alex's number. I got in touch with Alex, who then said, "Yeah, I should be able to get Will on board," and that was that. And then so the rhythm section was nicely done. The three of us got together and just started rehearsing some old songs that I had taken from my old band and sort of wanted to reshape them and move them over into this new venture. And then we were sort of thinking, well, where are we going to find a guitarist from? So we auditioned a couple, and it just so happened again that a chap by the name of Sam, who had depped for my old band before, was still kicking about and was still available. And he's a phenomenal guitar player, and I was so curious as to how on earth he hadn't been snapped up yet. So I just thought I'd get in there.
The second guy we came across, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah, pretty much. The first guy didn't quite work out. It wasn't really quite the right fit for the band. And then I just thought, well, why? Well, I know Sam, Alex, and Will know each other. I know that they'll get on nicely. I was already getting on very well with Alex and Will because they're just very laid back, chill guys who never really do. We don't argue. So there's no internal fighting over this and that and whatever. It's just a chill, happy experience because we'd all been in bands before. We'd all been through the whole ego thing and just fighting over this, that, and the other trivial matters, and it just sucking the joy out of it. So we all wanted just to have a nice, happy experience and sort of see where it goes. And Sam said, "Yeah, I love that idea." So he came in, listened to the songs that I'd done, and the rest is history. That from that first rehearsal onwards, that was it. We became this foursome that just started taking and shaping these songs and writing new ones and turning them into the way that they are now. And it was just joyous. It was joyous. So I'm indebted to Amanda Green, and I'm indebted to other bands not taking Sam. So that was that's how we all kind of started.
So you got together, and I guess you just started kind of rehearsing and rewriting these songs that you wrote previously.
Yes. So we spent about a good year at least getting a good set together.
I think we started it. When did we start with? It was like November 2021. I think is when we started, like those first rehearsals, and it was like it was a very clear idea of, right, before we even think about booking a gig, we're gonna try and get a 45-minute set put together of our own original stuff. We practiced a couple of covers as well, just sort of like as an early kind of break the ice type thing, and we just rehearsed pretty much every weekend for over a year. And then our first gig wasn't until February 2023. So February last year. A good nearly 18 months of just going away, being in the corner, and working away at it. And we got writing very, very quickly, and very easily as well. One of us would come up with a riff or something that we had from a previous band and so forth. And it was just it's all been very, very natural in the way that we do things. Obviously, now that things are chugging along and we are trying to find gigs and book gigs, it is, much more a case of we're trying to find a bit extra time as to where we can actually get the writing done, and that balance does come with its challenges, as every band does have, because you want to have a polished, set to really show off your good stuff, whilst at the same time writing new stuff. So that's been interesting and fun to sort of experiment with and discover along the way. But that's how it all began. it's crazy that the time has just gone by so fast. It feels like yesterday that we were finding out that the old rehearsal studio space had been shut down because of it had been labeled inadequate. So that was that was great fun to find out. And then having to sort of ferry around and try and find somewhere else to go. Time flies when you're having fun, does it not?
So to kind of take you back in time, what was your first gig like as a band? Was it a nightmare? Was it good? What was it like for you?
The feedback was bloody brilliant, actually. Very, very, very solid for a first gig, I think.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
Considering we played for a good hour and a half as well, with a lot of covers in there as well. It was to a packed pub, really. Not packed to the rafters, but a good amount of people there. There must have been a good 100 people there.
Yeah, for a first gig, it was wonderful.
Nicely paid.
It was paid. The only slightly annoying thing for me was that I lost my voice after the first sort of half an hour or so.
That would be a problem.
Yeah, only because I just the onstage monitor coming back at me wasn't working properly, so I did have to yell quite a bit, and as you can imagine, that does come with consequences. So my voice not great. Gig overall, it didn't really matter. In the end, it just doesn't matter. Everyone had a great time. For a first show, it was amazing, and we all came away from it just thinking, yeah, we've got something here. I think we all just sort of thought, yeah, this could really work, and it did. Our songs went down very well. Since then, they've obviously they have morphed and changed and evolved as time has gone on. But ultimately, at their core, they still carry that same power and that same message. So we were very much encouraged by our first show, and mainly considering that most bands, when they do their first gig together, it's only maybe half an hour, 40 minutes, and we did nearly 2 hours. And people stayed; they didn't leave. So, so that was very encouraging. Definitely, that was a good night. 2 years ago now, mad,
crazy, wow. So, how do you guys go about booking gigs then? Do you find it's quite a difficult thing to kind of, email various people and just sort of hope for the best, or what's your approach to that kind of side of things?
Well, we do find it challenging. Yeah, we're in a position where we're lucky enough. We seem to have 2 or 3 stomping grounds in Surrey. As far as the rest of it goes, yeah, we're struggling to get pubs interested in the original material. And then, the issue you have is venues will give us a slot on shows, but for very little pay, So this is a challenge we're coming across at the moment.
It is. The pubs want us to play purely covers, and the venues, as Will says, is absolutely right. They just want us to basically. It's either it's a slot that is when no one will be there, or it's a slot that doesn't really offer much pay. Now, the ones that we have done, they have stuck to their word, and it's been a share of the tickets, and we have been compensated a little bit, but of course it's not enough to cover everything. So that bit does prove challenging, but I think we're at the stage in our journey that it's about how where you can play rather than how much money you can get at the minute. If you came into the music industry to try and make money, then you're a fool, really. Nobody comes in this to make money. We do this for the love of playing music, and the venues that we've found. I mean, I'm always searching for rock venues in particular that are in and around Surrey. We haven't gone outside the realms of the borders of Surrey just yet, because everywhere that I have got in touch with who is, let's say, Portsmouth or Hampshire, even Bristol, they've all said basically something along the lines of that they will only book local acts for them, and we should be, we're not a big enough name to headline their venue yet and introduce, bring a crowd along to their venue, and then they can book a local act to do the support slot, so that that local support slot can then be introduced to our fans. So we're tending to try and stick as local as possible. We're very lucky that London's just on the doorstep. We haven't really tried to conquer London just yet. I did that before with an old band, probably too early. And London is just incredibly saturated. London's great for opportunity because there's lots of it, but there's almost too much of it. You can find a venue anywhere in London that's putting on, a music night and get in touch and, get a slot on. But those ones are, Tuesday or Wednesday evenings and no one will turn up. So it's trying to essentially, wheedle out the needles within the haystack, really. And being smart with your gig choices. I agree when people say that, it is about playing as much and as often as you can, but it's also about being smart about it. We have enough experience between the four of us to know when a gig is going to not be very good, in the sense of no one's going to be there. We've also fallen victim to pay to play, that is often disguised as you pay for a bunch of tickets with a promoter company, and then this is for, let's say the O2 Academy in Brixton or Islington somewhere, that has that attraction to it, and you'll then buy a set of 40 tickets, for example. That'll cost you 200 quid, and then the idea is that you will then sell those tickets on. And for every, I think you sell the tickets for like 10 quid, of which you get to keep 7 out of the £10, and the other 3 go back to the promoter. And that's basically it's just a disguised pay to play, because, when you're starting out, unless or, a lot of people that are, in and around, Camden or whatever, or Islington, you're not going to sell 40 tickets at £10 each. All right, fine. Some other bands might, but a lot of us don't. Particularly when it's our first or second gig, and on a Thursday night when no one is really available or doesn't want to come out, on a work night. So that basically is just a way in which companies will, try and scam you off a little bit. So those waters have been murky and tough to navigate, but we have enough experience between us to sort of get the alarm bells ringing as to when another one of those gigs is rearing its ugly head. So yeah, we're trying to be smart about it. We've been lucky enough we're setting expectations not massively high. We're just setting them reasonably. The goal was to try and get 3 festivals this summer, and we've been lucky enough to get 3 festivals. We've done 2 of them so far. The next one's coming up next month, and from then it'll be a case of, right, okay, well, we start again. We get back in touch with the venues that we've been to, see if they've got things coming up in the autumn. And in the meantime, every gig that we do at those venues, and it's a new audience every time. So we know the venues that we've played at. Shout out to the Queen's Head in Farnham. It's an amazing venue where we've played at a couple of times before. Every gig has been different. Every audience has been different. It doesn't matter that we've played there 3 times, because every time we play, new people come up. They scan our QR code, and they hopefully listen and share our music. Hopefully those 10 people will then know another 10 people who then know another 10 people. If we just keep doing that, it will slowly start to make a difference. It is a marathon, not a sprint. We know this. It's a numbers game. It's a marathon, and it does take a long time to get there. Meanwhile, of course, the whole online, your online image has got to be as out there as well. So, we also are trying to create as much content as possible and put it out there. And it's a tough balance to try and be smart with, and how much of our own money to part with as well, and particularly where to put it, because you've got to put a lot of your own money aside to kind of do this. The money's not going to come in straight away. You've got to pay a lot for it for yourself. You've got to spend money to make money, and it is a challenge to navigate where exactly to put that. And you do learn a lot by trial and error, particularly as the one thing I'd say that we don't have a lot of experience in collectively, and I hope Will would agree with this, is how to navigate the online world of social media and sort of that area of it, because it is still fairly new, isn't it? I mean, to me, 10 years ago, 10 years ago, I was still at university. This stuff didn't exist. It wasn't the be all and end all of everything to have several thousand followers before anybody took you seriously. It seems to be about content first, music second is the feeling that we get. I don't know if Will agrees with that, but
I think you're right there. Yeah, it's definitely content first, it feels like at the moment. You're waiting for something to go viral, really. And then the music after that. But no, we'll see.
I mean, my thinking about social media, because I use Instagram quite a lot for myself, is you're not necessarily looking for hundreds and thousands of followers, although that might be nice. You're looking for those followers who are actually really interested in what you're doing. And, I personally think, let's pick a number out of the blue, 500 relatively dedicated followers who actually like your music is better than 100,000 followers who, they just liked one thing once and that was great. And it was like, oh, you're not really interested in what we're doing, are you? We just posted a meme or whatever and you liked it. That's my approach to it. And as long as you're being, this is such a horrible phrase, as long as you're being authentically yourself on that social media, that's the important thing. I think it's often, sorry, I'm not going to carry on, but I think it's often very important to remember that people actually want to know what you're like as people as well as musicians, which is quite a difficult thing to do, don't get me wrong, but
no, you're right, it is. It's much better to have it's much better to have if it's a dedicated following and a small following, it's still a dedicated following, and those people will engage with your work. They'll engage with you, and it's far more beneficial to you as a developing group, because that is more likely to then, the way that the whole ridiculous algorithm of social media works is, if you have 500 people who are 90% fully engaged and fully loving what you're doing, that is more likely then to attract more people of the same, with the same outlook on life and the same. They'll have the same, mindset as them, to then, to then discover who you are, and so the trend keeps going. So it's much healthier to have it that way around.
And I think it's even this is something I've realised recently, and a lot of people listening to this podcast might not like this idea. If you have a follower as a band who you consider to be completely irrelevant to what you are doing, consider making them unfollow you, because that is possible to do. You can do that, and it is that metric thing, that numbers thing of the more people of a certain kind of type of a certain genre. You want music lovers, obviously, who want people who like your kind of music. If you can kind of curate the people who follow you, and you don't want to do that too much. You don't want to kind of lose like 3/4 of your followers because you go, oh, they're irrelevant. But if people follow, if you go, oh, maybe not, maybe you're not a good kind of fit for what we're doing, you could get rid of them. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah,
I know it's a numbers game, but if you really want the algorithm to work for you, that might be a good way to do it. I don't know. That's my. That is a tip.
That is a tip. Take on board. Though. Never thought of that. Never thought of that.
That's the first time I've shared that tip. So enjoy. You've got it before everyone else.
Make sure I write it down.
So, moving over, I was going to say moving over to nicer things, maybe not nicer things. Have you had any nightmare experience gigs as a band where things have gone wrong, or has it all been quite smooth sailing so far?
Will, has anything gone badly wrong for you on a gig? You've sailed through with flying colours on every gig, and
Me, luckily enough, the mistakes have happened just before gigs. Yeah, like cables cutting out and what have you.
Oh yes, when your pedal board stopped working, and that was the day before. The day before the gig.
But yeah, we haven't had nightmare gigs, have we? That's just.
I suppose as a band we haven't. We've had gigs where we've had individual problems. I've lost my voice.
If anything, it's been mediocrity has been the problem on one or two.
Mediocrity? Well, in the sense of
in the sense of performance, yeah, and the whole sound, because we've been less rehearsed, for example. But I don't think we've had a disaster.
Yeah, in the early gigs, there were a couple where we were like, no, we know we can do better than that, and so that taught us early on that it sounds like an obvious thing, but you've got to be rehearsed. You've got to, just having one rehearsal before the gig is just not good enough. You've got to have at least 2 or 3. The more the better. I learned this from an old bandmate years ago who used to say to me, practice it till you can't get it wrong. But we haven't. We've always been good. It's that thing, isn't it, where people always say to you, "Oh, I didn't notice anything was wrong." You're picking it all amongst yourselves. And there is an element to that. We are all perfectionists. I suppose the worst one for me was when actually it was fairly recent. It was when we played. We played Lambstock, great venue, the Lamb. They've given us a good number of gigs over the past couple of years, and we're very, very, very grateful to them. And they are always kind to us and always very supportive. But the old singer's problem, I lost my voice, and that was another gig that was how long did we do? Did we do 50 minutes, an hour? And I lost my voice towards the end because of that sort of pub festival atmosphere where there wasn't a lot of, there was people stopping and looking at us, but there were also lots of people having their own conversations and having a great time, which just meant that I lost focus, couldn't really hear myself, and ended up singing far too loudly too early. And every time that happens to me, I get very down about it. I know the gig that we did at the Fighting Cocks, where we met you for the first time. Sam had a massive problem with his guitar, and his switch had stopped working, so both pickups had stopped working properly, and so his entire sound just went, and he got quite upset by that, so didn't have a great time. So there's been individual moments, but no, we haven't. We're touch wood. We are nightmare free at the time of recording. We are nightmare free so far. We've had gremlins. We've had gremlins, but we haven't had the full horsemen of the apocalypse come down on us just yet. No one's heckled, for example. No one's heckled and gone and thrown a tomato at us, or chucked a bottle of piss at us yet. So we're still waiting to get those battle scars. We know they're coming.
Yes, the closest to heckle is playing the wrong Alice in Chains song at a cover gig, things like that. No, I didn't want that one. I wanted that one. Walk out the pub and.
Yes, we did get that. We have had requests. We did have one member of the audience who this was after we played, and the evening was spelled out as an originals rock night. 3 rock bands on the bill. Each of them are originals. They're going to be playing their own stuff, and there was that audience member who at the end. When we were just at the bar, they were just like, "Yeah, that band Troubadour, yeah, they were good, but they just played all their own stuff. Like, they didn't do a single cover." And it was like, did you not read the room? The whole point of this is to do originals. So yeah, people are funny like that. But yeah, I'd say that's pretty harmless in comparison to what she could have said.
Yeah. Yeah, could have been a lot worse.
She could have been. She could have been ruthless. She could have mocked Will's hair. And that would have been horrendous.
Could have mocked your hair.
Yeah, she could have done. Not a lot left to mock.
I can only apologise for my long hair.
Yeah, like once upon a time.
Never mind. You should just grow an epic beard. That's always the other solution.
Do you know, it's this used to be a lot longer. I've only shaved it really for school to sort of like make it a bit neater. And the fact that it was, and this is going to be vulgar, but it was flaking like an avalanche. So it was pretty rough in here. And a lot of you know how it is when you get all that sort of this is very much men problems here. But when you get those clogs of moisturizer that have sort of clammed up because you haven't quite massaged it into your skin properly, and it's got caught in somewhere along the journey from beard to skin. It's stopped and has just clogged up and dried out. So we had to get rid of the thing. We had to get rid of it and start all over again. But, good fun.
Alex, our drummer, is also cleft of hair and has made up for it by growing a fine brown and grey beard.
Yes, he is the wizard of the company.
Cleft of hair is not a phrase I've ever heard before, but I really like it.
He is follically inept.
I thought it was follically challenged.
Oh, that's it. Follically challenged.
Yeah, but follically inept is quite a phrase as well. So, what would you guys say has been the biggest success of the band so far, in your opinion?
I'd probably say Gilfest.
Yeah, I think Glenn to agree with you.
I'd say Gilfest. I know it was hot, and it was one of those gigs where it was a struggle to get through because of the heat, and one of us didn't look after ourselves properly, and that would be me. I didn't drink half enough water that I needed to in order to wear what I wore on stage. It was 24 degrees outside, sunshine all day. We'd been there since about 12:30. Our set time was 4:30. So, we'd been 4.5 hours in the sun and then into a tent that had absorbed the heat all day. So it was probably up to about 28, maybe even 30 degrees, I think, on stage. And nearly gave me heat stroke. And that was quite a serious moment after the gig where I had to really go and look after myself. But that was my fault. But but we played a good show. We brought people in who were, sort of just out and about enjoying the festival. People actually, we ended the show with a lot more people than the number who started, and just booking the festival in the first place. Gilfest has returned this year for after about 10, 12 years. That it has been away, and it was a resounding success. It was very encouraging to get the phone call to say, yeah, we like your music and we want to put you on the return of Gilfest on at the Cave stage with a lot of really quite excellent bands that were playing that stage that day. Some really, really good music, and they gave us a nice sort of late afternoon slot. It was a real thrill to play a fairly big festival. These were Sam Ryder. He headlined the Sunday night. The Stranglers were on the Saturday night. We were in some very good company, and it was such a joy. So I think that's been our biggest success to date so far is booking a slot at quite a renowned award-winning festival. So we're really hoping that the fact that we have done that can be a little bit of a stepping board to other areas that we can sort of say, hey, we've played here now. So would you consider us for your thing? So I'm very grateful to Stan who did book us for that gig, and grateful for that the sun came out. It was a beautiful day. It was really busy on that Saturday, and
also I'd point out that we'd sort of proved to ourselves with that show that having a larger stage, the stagecraft and showmanship came alive, because we're never used to that, and having a bigger stage, we actually made use of it, and that was very encouraging as far as I was concerned as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We of course, we don't expect to be playing big stages straight away. We're used to the smaller in the corner of the pub type stages, and we've really we've mastered that. Like, we know how to stand still and not really go anywhere. Which is fine. It's not a problem at all. But and suddenly being given all this space, it was like, oh God, what do we? It was half at the beginning. It was like, what do you do? But it was so freeing. It was wonderful. And so yeah, that was really lovely to have, and professional, proper, full on technicians, and one guy looking after the sound, and one guy looking after all the gear and equipment, and one guy helping to take our stuff on and off, on and on, and a proper and a stage manager, whereas usually it's one person looking after all of it. So it was a real thrill, and it worked like clockwork. It was amazing. It was literally one band on, one band off. There were no yeah, sure, fine. The bit behind it was, chock-a-block with cards at one point, but nobody ever really got in the way. When you consider how many bands were playing that day, it was amazing. It was amazing. So yeah, I think that's been our biggest success so far. And I think I think as well, and I'm going to toot our horn, I think we deserved it. We've worked hard, we've grafted, and we do put on a good show, I think. And it was nice to be able to, demonstrate that a little bit more on to like the next level up, as it were.
Sounds fun. It really does.
It was great fun. It was really good fun.
Just a bit warm.
It was too warm. And I was stupid. I was an idiot. I shouldn't have worn that jacket. But I wore a double-breasted jacket, and I wore jeans, and I wore shoes. And I paid a price.
Shorts next time.
Yeah, so we're gonna have an internal discussion as to how to dress for summer gigs, because I personally look really terrible in shorts. My legs are hollow pins, as my aunt likes to say. So we're gonna probably have a discussion as to what exactly to do about that if we play a gig that's very, very hot. Will looks good in everything, so he hasn't really got a problem. Alex can sit nicely behind the drum kit, so he hasn't got to worry. It's just really me and Sam who we're limited in our choice of clothing for when the sun comes out, but we'll get there.
Or you could just only play in winter month.
Yeah, take a summer hiatus.
Winter
Why
band.
not? Why not winter band?
Seasonal.
Yeah, absolutely. Tribal Jury open from open from October to April only.
Just need to write some Christmas music now. That's the next step.
We do. We need a Christmas #1 now.
Well, make it happen. They're not really a thing anymore, really. Anyway.
No, you're right. They're not.
So, speaking of music, tenuous link, when it comes to recording, do you record yourselves or go into the studio? What's your approach to that side of life?
We tend to record in studio. But we'll use multiple studios. We've got a very good friend who runs a studio out in the Surrey Hills, where we use his space for drums. And if we're lucky enough to get the whole day, we'll probably do the whole thing down there. But we did a bunch of drums down there just to sort of get 4 songs done just drumming, and then we've got a closer studio in Guildford that we go to record pretty much everything else. So it's a mixture of those two. But all in studio, really. Our first thing we did was a live recording, and that was fine. That was good to sort of just showcase, here we are, this is the sound that we can make. But as the sound developed and everything, it was pretty obvious that we needed to start getting a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, sort of more in depth with our recording, and get a little bit more into the nitty gritty, and get a bit more. And with doing studio recording, you can be a lot more creative. So we transitioned to that pretty quickly.
Yes. So the idea of, because I know a lot of people do it, the idea of home recording is not something that you want to go near as such.
We've not felt the need, really, because we have friends who who have decent equipment. So it's not really costly, is it? So
No, it's been very cost effective, and I used to have, I've got interfaces and things, and I do have a good microphone set up, but I'm not a studio engineer. None of us really are. The difference that a proper studio engineer who knows what they're talking about really does make a difference. And credit to those bands who can do it and who can do it at home, do it all themselves, and make their music sound really quite amazing. But I've tried it before with acoustic stuff, and it sounds terrible. I'll be the first to admit I don't have the mind for it, and particularly with a drummer, I don't think we'd know where to begin with recording a drum kit and making it sound good. Even some studio engineers who we've talked to, they've said, "Yeah, I'm not very good at doing drums." So
yeah, it's quite an admission.
Yeah, it is. It seems to be the holy grail of studio engineering talent. If you can record a drum kit, then you can do anything. Well, I'm only going by what people have said to me. Maybe I'm talking to the wrong people, but yeah.
I don't know. I quite like recording drums. I mean, the only problem with recording drums is it just takes so bloody long to set it up. But
yeah. A chap I've used previously before Tribal Jury, he would get the drums recorded, and then the rest of us would have to go upstairs into the green room to sit around and wait whilst he comped the drums there and then, because it was just, it was like, right, once the drums are done, they're going to be the most work to balance out, get right, EQ them, quantize whatever I'm going to do. Everyone else is a piece of cake compared to this. So yeah, I am fully appreciative of that work and how tough it can be.
Good fun. So what goals do you have for the band in the next 6 months to a year or so? Big open wide question.
Well, so the goals are, so the band is totally self-sufficient. That's the main goal, is it not?
The goal, yeah, that's the ultimate goal, is to be self-sufficient. I would say we've got some checkpoints to get to along the way in that ultimate goal. We're trying to so we've hit our 3 festival target for this year. We want to try and get a one up on next year by getting in early. And sort of saying, well, we've played here and here. Surely that shows that we're good enough to come and play for you guys. So we're hoping to maybe hit 4 or 5 next year, try and up it. I've actually got a list of names and PR companies on my little board, my vision board, as it were, to people to get in contact with. I think realistic goals are things like I want to try and book the next set of venues. We want to try and have a busy autumn. Try and get maybe 1 or 2 gigs per month going from autumn into the winter. I've got a few people that I want to get in contact with, particularly when it comes to a online campaign. I want to get a campaign going for us to take our latest single that's just come out and try and get a playlist campaign going. I'm aware of a couple of genuine sort of promotional companies that do offer such a thing, where you give them your budget, they will then take your song, and then using their playlists, connections and so forth, they will then run a campaign for you and then see how it goes. We're just basically trying to, I think a big next goal in our sort of journey to be self-sufficient is we need more fans. So and as well as introducing ourselves to fans live and, getting them to turn up to gigs or meeting people at gigs, we also know that social media is a big thing, and online is a enormous part of it. So having an online presence, trying to get some playlists. If we can get into a couple of playlists by the end of the year, that would be I think a reasonable goal to try and achieve. just sort of to try and keep the monthly listeners coming back. It's that all important number on Spotify is how many monthly listeners you've got. Keeping people from come back, because I know it's a pittance, but people who do come back does equal money eventually. So yeah, it's a combination of those sort of things. I've got, we want to try and crack London a little bit. Got a couple of venues to get in touch with.
If you're talking the next 6 months, we're trying to get together some sort of original artwork, a load of it, which I'm trying to take the helm on that. So that's a goal for probably by the end of the year. I can have a sort of portfolio of this stuff that we can put towards a new EP.
Definitely, because we've got our singles that have come up. We've got three studio songs that are now out. We've got 2 more in the works. One of them is probably going to be released before the end of the year. And then I think we're going to then compile all of that into an EP using Will's talents as an artist. Even if it's just, getting content, together, it's all about content and trying to keep the content posts going. So yeah, we're going to probably do a music video. I was lucky enough to meet some people who do that, and got chatting to them. They're students, so they are willing to offer us, a whole, time for them to do a full music video for us for very little money, which was great. Because I've done it before again with music videos, and it can cost thousands. For not a lot of people to listen to it, because we're new. Again, spend your money wisely, be smart. So, utilize those kinds of people who are willing to, cut their cloth on your work, because at the end of the day, you're at the start of your journey, and it's not going to make a massive difference to the audience who are going to watch, and sort of, they'll still look at it and go, oh, nice song. They're not going to look at it and go, oh, great production value. They're just not. We might, but the vast majority of people who are going to listen to our music are just going to listen to our music and hopefully really enjoy it and want to come back for more. So it doesn't really matter about the scale of the ray tracing and the 4K that we've managed to get into our video. It just what is that? It's not a big deal right now. So shoot it on your iPhone. The iPhone is the greatest thing in the world for easy access to do it yourself. So yeah, we've got reasonable goals, I think, for the next 6 months, and I think we're well within our means to be able to achieve those things. But we are aware, of course, it does take work. It takes hard work. You're at it all the time, and there's never really a break from it, particularly when it comes to having an online presence. So yeah. So my penultimate question for you is: what is your best piece of advice for bands nowadays? I would say to any new band that's starting, be prepared to work your socks off and make sure that this is truly what you want to do. And if it is what you want to do, you stick at it and you go for it 100%. And 100% doesn't mean, every few days you write some notes or whatever, or once a week you go to rehearsal and do a bit. You every day are looking at venues. You're putting together the hashtags that would fit with your music on social media. You are siphoning off content to upload for that next week. I would recommend using a scheduler if you have a particularly busy work life, because obviously you're not going to be able to quit your job straight away and do this. You will have to be working. But a scheduler is a very good tool for putting your posts out there at a certain time, at a certain day. It doesn't always work. I've frustratingly had very big problems with Facebook Marketplace and with Facebook Business Suite, where I have scheduled a full week's load of content and then none of it has gone out just because the system has been not very good. So I've then ended up doing it manually. which then be prepared to then go and do it manually, and be prepared as well to forget. Be prepared to make mistakes. Do things by trial and error. I know that the world will make you believe that you have to be perfect from the get go, but you don't. A lot of these bands. I always come back to that quote that Elbow said. Elbow said it took us 10 years to be an overnight sensation. So be prepared to put in the years. Spend your money. Be prepared to spend your money. And however much money you are putting into recording your music, that is also how much you should be putting into marketing your music. Whether that is through Facebook Marketplace, however you choose to do that. But I probably Facebook Marketplace or using it through a genuine company that has got playlist connections and has worked with companies like Spotify, BBC, whatever it may be, Deezer, Apple Music, where they have got access to playlists and are genuinely going to champion your work. Do your research, do your homework. It's a tough job. Do not but don't listen to Instagram. And don't listen to reels that you come across saying, I can get you loads of followers. Anybody who is plugging followers is not plugging followers. They're just plugging bots that will get seen through straight away, and you'll then be banned. So don't fall for that. You want to look more for a company that does have a track record of working with bands to do a PR campaign for them online. Those companies do exist. They are a bit few and far between, but there are a few who genuinely will want to work with you and will be able to get your music a bit far. But again, don't do that until you have got good photos, good gigging experience, hone your craft locally, go around the pubs, go and play covers to start with, spend time really practicing what it's like to be on stage, and practice. You can only get this from doing it, but in that practice, you'll learn how to deal with it when it goes wrong as well, because it will. Things will go wrong. Your pedal will stop working. Your guitar will suddenly go out of tune on stage, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with it. Little things like that can throw you off. You're going to learn how to deal with it, and when your voice cracks and goes. So yeah, that's a big information dump to give someone who is starting out for the first time, because we're starting out for the first time together collectively. We're still new. We're still learning how to do it. We're still, we're still finding our way. But I think we have enough collectively to be able to navigate it the correct way. But yeah, it's a hard road. It's a hard one out there, and don't worry as well about being too young. Or don't worry if you're too old. If you think you're too old, you're not. Songwriting comes from life experience. And I just think if you're 21 compared to 31, a 31-year-old has got a lot more life experience than a 21-year-old. And it's why it worries me that the music industry at the moment, mainstream, is so concerned with signing or promoting really young artists, because they'll have a very good first album, but then it'll tail off because they haven't lived. You just haven't lived enough. There's only. All right, fine. Taylor Swift is probably the exception, but there's only so many songs you can write about love, loss, and heartbreak that someone hasn't done before. Taylor Swift being the anomaly. Praise be. Don't want to annoy anybody, but yeah. But ultimately, the number one rule: don't do this if you're in it just for money, and be prepared to really work your socks off.
Enjoyment is key. Yeah, that's it. Don't get bogged down with it, because we find ourselves getting bogged down with the numbers and all this.
Yeah, William literally just textbook showing you exactly what I was doing. just getting bogged down in all of the mess that is out there online, and just forgetting to really enjoy what you're doing. If you've got a song that you love, play it. You know, there's nothing more than that. Enjoy what you're doing. Have fun with it, because it is fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, to close out the podcast, I'd like to ask your favourite song that's been released from the band to play at the end. So, which song is it and why?
I'm going to say "Beat You Down" because it is our latest. Because it is. Wait. Okay, it is our. All right. No, listen. I really like the Bad Man Gentleman. I think I think it's such a great song, and it's been really well done, and it is collectively a song that we it's one of the first ones that we literally all wrote together. But I think it's if you're discovering us for the first time, and we don't want to take up too much of your time, because we don't want to just shove an 8-minute behemoth in your face. Maybe save that till second, because it is nearly 8 minutes. It's nearly 8 minutes long. So I would say "Beat You Down" because it is quite straight away. Everything that you will get from us is in that song. It is high octane. It is energetic. It is raw. We're very keen on that. Our lyrics are very raw and sort of cut right to the heart of what it is that we are feeling, and it is it's powerful. It's a very powerful, hard-hitting song that is very fast, and you can easily add to your workout playlist, or however you like to work out, or go for a run. So I think "Beat You Down" is the song that I would choose. What song would Will choose though? And would it be that one? Would you agree with me?
You drive a hard bargain.
Do it. Were you going to say "Gentleman, Bad Man, Gentleman"?
Bad Man and Gentleman is, yes. No. I could be swayed easily towards "Beat You Down" though. Yeah, totally. Because Bad Man and Gentleman is a long 7-8 minute album ender, and it's probably not the best introduction you could have to our band.
I would say if you like "Beat You Down," you will love the Bad Man. You would love the Bad Man.
"Beat You Down" is a good starting point.
Yeah. I would say it's a perfect starter. It's a great starter. If you want to then sample the main course, go and listen to "Bad Man Gentleman."
A further recommendation. Wow. Well, this is Tribal Jury with "Beat You Down." Guys, it's been great to talk with you all about the band.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Say